allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm not going to read the rules I typically read out. This is more of a study session than a typical agenda. So we have a limited audience this evening that's in person. And by that I mean no one. So
That's pretty limited.
so I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Oh dear, I didn't bring my list. Well, Mr. Lochran,
Here?
Mr. Patel,
He's absent.
absent, yeah.
Mhm.
Mr. Galley,
Here.
Mr. Ritchie,
Absent.
absent, and who am I missing?
Borisman.
Mr. Boersma.
And then the two of you.
And then you. then you.
Ms. Tully, here, and Chairman Savada.
Here.
You're
Well
here
done. Well done.
From memory.
Better than I would.
We have a quorum we have 4 of 7, so we can open the meeting and conduct business. We have agenda that's presented in front of us. It looks good to me, so I'm going to move approval of the agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor of approving the agenda as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing no one. We have an agenda. We have one person attending remotely. And this is item E, public comment for items not on the agenda. And the resident attending remotely, do you have any public comment for any items that are not on tonight's agenda? If so, please begin speaking. Hearing no comment, then I'm going to assume
She
there.
did raise her hand. That's, okay.
I'm squinting. I don't have my glasses on. Is that Camilla?
Yes.
Do you have any comments for items not on tonight's agenda? I don't hear any comments, so we're going to move on to item F.
Can't hear sound.
Oh,
Oh, not this again. She's one of my neighbors.
is it?
Who's doing that? What? Who's doing that? I think you have somebody.
Try now.
Can you hear me now?
You're muted, man. Want to ask her if she has a...
She says, she
She
said
said
yes.
yes.
You can't hear? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to item F is public hearings. There are no public hearings this evening, and so it brings us to regular business. Item G. G1 is public engagement strategy. Should we just let Megan take over?
Fire away.
Hi.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Megan Ness in Minnock. I'm with Carlisle Wortman Associates. Alyssa Starling is here with me as well. We're both going to try and fill Dick's shoes here. And the purpose of us being here is to talk to you about public engagement strategy for the rest of the master plan process and leaving you having lead to design that. So wanted to do 3 things. Is number 1, go over what has already been said in the main topics, specifically from that plan to plan meeting that you had with the township board a few months ago, just to have that in your head. Then to talk about stakeholders, and we'll ask you to write some things down and stick some things up on the wall. And then after we have all of that out there, talk about how to do the community engagement for the rest of the master plan process, which is basically confirming and looking at your goals and objectives. Then seeing what other implementation, talking to folks about specific areas, if that's what you feel like is needed. And then also looking at implementation and confirming what that implementation is and actually priorities for what to do first or what to invest the most time or resources in. So that was my plan of attack. But I always welcome input from other folks in terms of if there are things in the process that you feel like should be there or questions that weren't asked. Okay, see, and as a facilitator, I take silence as agreement that you're good. So I'm asking you to speak up if you have something you want said
Understood.
or done.
And let's make this kind of a dialogue. Don't ask me for permission to speak. Just engage.
Yeah, so the first, and that would be great, thank you. First, so plan to plan, casting your brain back a number of months ago. We asked all of you to think, we asked the group to say what are your musts for the master plan, then ask people to vote on them. And so then the top vote getters were Dixie Corridor, open space, recreation, and safety services infrastructure. And after that, so those got 9 to 11 votes out of all the people there. And then after that, it was housing, medical, town center, transportation and sustainability. All of those got like 6 to 5. And then 2 to 1 votes were sustainability, school-age children, attracting families, community character, and zoning.
And these were the sticky notes that we put up there? So
You
you
put-
kind of aggregated things that were similar?
We aggregated the dots, so we asked you to
Yep.
vote with
Yeah,
dots.
yeah, yeah, okay.
And some of those, if you look back at the report on this, there were subtopics underneath each of these things.
Mhm.
So these are any dots that relate to that subject aggregated.
Yep.
So that, so now we're a few months later. When you reflect on those topics, is there anything that needs to be added, you feel like, to that list as something that should be discussed in the master plan or process, or do you feel that that's a comprehensive list?
You know, I was surprised, excuse me, I was surprised that Dixie Corridor was first. I guess I don't recall that. I think that's interesting because it doesn't really apply to maybe half the township. So I was surprised to see that. I think it's certainly something we should be concentrating on. But what's not here is Sashabaw. So that's kind of been a hot topic recently and development along Sashabaw. So and maybe that's town center. Maybe that's what that is. But that's kind of interesting to me. I don't know what you guys think about that.
The last plan was on Sashabaw.
Mm-hmm.
What'd we call it?
Oh,
Well, the last couple I mean, we did a whole comprehensive Dixie Highway corridor study. Heck, we even did a Sashabaw corridor study years and years and years
Yeah.
ago. So, I mean, we
Well,
kind
that's
of,
basically what we
it
did
seems like
last
every
time.
master plan we bounce between the
right.
two.
It must be.
Cause I know the sub area on Dixie got greatly expanded with the last master plan. What's interesting to this list is when you read the survey results, stuff that's at the bottom is what people care about most. Community character, school age children, those especially are what people that answer the survey, all 425 of them seem to care about.
Mm-hmm.
Is community character. Why are they here? It's community character and it's schools. So,
That's really interesting.
I guess on what Tim was saying, I mean, if you add medical and town center together, you come up with 10.
Yeah,
it's pretty much.
The largest chunk of
It could be.
undeveloped property is in the town center. It's pretty much centered on the medical hub. The northern part of it, we've actually had quite a bit of build out the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, we have a lot of interest on those parcels, more of them,
Yeah.
since Kirko's come in.
So the medical portion of it was, the hospital that may or may not be there.
You're probably
and-
right. I didn't see the medical part either.
So if you, like I said, that kind of equals the stuff at the top of the list, if you take the aggregate. So that's really the only place we can have substantial medical development,
That's right.
unless it's a redeveloped building, small office.
But the biggest weakness in the township is Dixie Highway. I mean, and it's getting worse every day. So and it's gonna be a lot of work and hard to know what to do and what we can do, really.
Well, we're trying to revive the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority that was on Dixie.
Yeah,
That will probably help. It's really, the development we've had there has been good, you know, but recently, but the problem is we still have large parcels that are, vacant, undeveloped, blighted, that we're still trying to work on,
And it's also a state highway,
correct?
so we can only do so much,
Yeah.
but it's still important.
Mm-hmm.
Housing, I look at the word sustainability, and it means different things to different people. And it angers some people and, you know, gets other people, you know, wound up. I look at sustainability, you know, one aspect is, it's nice not having to drive, you know, 10 miles for a gallon of milk. You know, it's nice being able to buy local, you know, to buy whatever locally and not have to go to Pontiac or Detroit or Troy or Novi or whatever. So I look at, and I look at, you know, the open space Dixie, that's kind of the dichotomy, the rustic versus the less rustic. You know, I like to be able to spend money here and have my awesome neighborhood and my awesome house and my awesome neighborhood, but also be able to have services and convenience. So I guess I talked, when we met with the township board a few months ago, I mentioned that term urban, I think it was, or something like that. They look at housing, you know, and sustainability, and, you know, I think of, you know, one thing about sustainability is affordability. You know, I think that's linked to sustainability, because people who really like living here now, when their kids leave, they want to maybe get a smaller house, and I think the township's done a really good job of providing missing middle type housing, but, you know, it can be really expensive, so, you know, I guess I want to have my cake and eat it too. I want to keep our character, but I also want to provide appropriate housing opportunities and opportunities to shop and get services as well. So, you know, it can all work if done correctly. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, and the point of this is to say and now what I'm gonna ask you to do is to take in mind what we've talked about, and then think about who are the stakeholders that need to be involved in that situation, in those discussions. Because you talked a little bit about the how, to get to things, but if you don't have community in the room or stakeholders in the room, then a lot of times you arrive at the wrong answers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to know also then, let's think about those topics and shift to, as we're discussing things and deciding things, who are the stakeholders who need to be involved? And to help you out with that, Alyssa's gonna give you all sticky notes. And my challenge to you is to write down at least 3 different types of stakeholders that we need to contact and invite into conversations. And we can, after we get the stakeholders, what we can do is talk about how we're gonna do it and what topics. And then in your packet, we had given you some things about stakeholder identification and a worksheet. I don't know if anybody did the worksheet, but if you did fill it out, we'll collect it and take it in. but there are different types of stakeholders. There are those who will be directly affected. So if we're talking about Dixie Highway, that would be the businesses and people who own it, but also the people who drive it. And then impacted would be those who were just off of it. And then there might be some people who are interested, maybe folks who live in Clarkston or live in neighboring communities, or would drive through. And then those who are aware, and so those who are aware, you just want to keep them informed. You don't necessarily want to involve them. They don't have to be involved in the conversation. And so a lot of times the people you keep involved are planning officials from adjacent communities. You would also keep to make aware people who are in the media, bloggers, folks on social media, things like that, in order for them to know what's going on and report that out to the wider groups. So take 5 minutes and write down some stakeholders.
But doesn't it depend on the project?
It does depend on projects, so just all of them. So if you say these people and then you want to put Dixie Highway, then do that on the sticky note. Just one idea per sticky note. We'll talk more about it. And if you need more, ahead of time.
And there's no wrong answer,
There's no wrong answer. It's brainstorming. There's no wrong answer.
because maybe there's an engagement tool that we're not thinking of that one of us can come up with that's gonna be really effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you're gonna, also, can you help me? Yes. You're gonna move this over so it's in a camera shot. So. Can you, okay. So that be okay?
Camera's right
Moving
there.
it out of the, oops, sorry, it's gotta go more towards me. More towards you? Oh, just. Are we good, Brian? Or, okay, yeah.
Yep, a little bit more, perfect.
Thank you. All right. All right. And then, you too, Brian.
I am,
No fair, Brian knows all the answers.
yeah.
So I don't know if you were on the PC yet when Pat first got elected. He did a business roundtable. There's about 20, 30 people there. You know, everybody left and said, "Oh, let's do this once a quarter
Mm-hmm.
or twice a year." And
That sounds like one of mine.
you know, it, like all good intentions, sometimes
Builders,
stuff gets in the
developers.
way and it fizzles. Yeah. I mean, he had a couple of the big property owners on Dixie. They had businesses. Kate Bowman was there.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other people. I think he invited one of the McLaren development people.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Can be really effective. But then you gotta keep it up.
Yeah,
keep the
you
momentum
can't. You
going.
can't. You know, you can't drop it.
I probably didn't do this right.
No, it's okay.
There's no
I
wrong.
can figure it out. We still working on
Yeah,
this.
those two are good.
Highway. Okay. Nearby resident, so that's all about Dixie.
Correct.
Okay.
But Dixie's different in different areas.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
So,
If you've gotten all of yours, just give me a nod, and then when we have them for everybody, we'll talk a little more. Brian, you want to clean?
So we
page.
should, select an area of Dixie Highway to work on instead of the whole thing. It's so different.
We'll save it for the group, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because
Those are good for now.
you're right, the extreme south end is very small parcel. Northern's
the
more
north
medical.
is-
Oh, yeah, we have tons.
Large,
Undeveloped,
different,
yeah.
Yeah, here.
You know, the challenge we have, and it's a good problem to have, is it's an awesome township. You know, there's a lot here for everybody, and there's no pressing terrible issues here. Like, there's no potential landfill dump, or, you know what I mean? Like, where,
Gravel mining operation.
yeah, like, there's no driving negative issue. There's little nuances, but there's nothing, you know?
It's development. I mean, you have groups that want development or are okay with the development, understanding that that's kind of a natural progression.
Mhm.
You have some that are anti, and there's, Facebook groups that
Mhm.
are completely devoted to that. So, I mean, I think that that's important that we recognize there are those groups that are out there. And, social media, it's usually the squeaky wheel are the ones that are loudest, but, I think that is that's our biggest dichotomy is development. And of course, planning commission, we deal with it, but
Mhm.
that's what I see in this community. Because you're right, I don't know if there's anything else that's necessarily an issue we have to solve. There's just ways to get better.
I mean, we've got, and not to take it over, but we've got 10-acre parcels, we've got 5-acre parcels, 1-acre parcels, walkable neighborhoods, commercial. We've got everything here, and there's, aside from from NIMBYism or whatever you want to call it, I'm not being disrespectful. I respect it, but the township's in really good shape. There's a lot going on here. And so what happens when things are pretty good is you have an empty room for a meeting like this. So,
Well, and
Come on in.
Hey,
the anti-development tends to center around, folks who've been here the longest, which my family's been here for 40 years, or 43 now. I moved here when I was 10. So there was nothing here, Stashaw's 2-lane road, it had McDonald's and a gravel pit,
mhm.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different township. I'm fine with 90% of the development. Sure, there's a few things here and there that I don't like, but as long as it's done responsibly and
Mhm.
we still have more open space than
Mhm.
pretty much everybody south of us,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let
See
the
both sides of it.
let the record show, Planning Commission member Richie showed up at 6:57 p.m.
I guess I was thinking it was tomorrow.
It's
Threw me
okay.
off.
Yeah, that's
I did too,
what
until my
the
phone
memo
buzzed on the
said.
couch.
Just
that's
want the
why I
record-
put
I just
put
want the record to give you credit
put
that
it
you
in
showed
bold
up.
and underline, just so.
You wanna point out who's
everybody
late.
catch that.
No. That was constructive.
All right.
But I
So-
think, I just want to say one thing that's very unique about us is the fact that if you go back 40 years in planning history, since you came here, and since I was born 44 years ago, that the northwest quadrant has not changed at all. And really, the northeast quadrant, if you go outside of Thundera and Walters Lake, I mean, we've had developments up there, but they're in context with that area.
Yeah.
Larger lot, subdivisions, and things like that. So I think we've held firm,
Mm-hmm.
on our growth.
Right, and that's not by accident. That's because of
Yeah.
the Planning Commission, the Township Board, the consultants all working together, and we've developed essentially as we've planned and zoned. And I guess that's my point is, we've held fat, we still have the Northwest that has a unique character. We've got a lot to offer here, and we've got a dichotomy here, and it's a good thing. And at the end of the day, there's not a lot of squeaky wheels. We're in really good shape, so,
So,
yeah.
but the things that keep rising, to the top in conversation with you, and also we've had focus groups with seniors and, soccer parents, kind of invaded Alyssa and I invaded a soccer practice
Oh, awesome.
Bribed people to talk to us with iced tea.
How did that go? Tell us about that.
I thought it went well. I mean, we talked to about 20 different people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, so Megan was wonderful. I was more of the like try to get people, and so I'd go up to people's car windows, and they're kind of freaked out by that. But we were trying to. We put out a big sign that said like free drinks, just come talk to us basically, and we had coffee, drinks for kids. So we really tried to hit all the demographics. And they were really open to talk to us. A lot of the things you're saying are in line with the things that they said to us. And I think that for the young families, it was either they were just new here and they'd come here with their family, or they were longtime residents, which obviously is typical. But with the longtime residents, there was this sort of, you were talking about like the community character. There was this community pride, and they remember how when they were here as kids, and so they want their kids to have that same experience. And then the one guy who I'll never forget, the Petoskey of the South, he was said, this I came here and I could see turkeys and all this wildlife, and it could be so much. And so I think that was the takeaway, that people really enjoy, like you said, the open space and the rural kind of character. And then they also touched a lot on development. So some people not so happy, and then some people who would like to see a Target.
And then,
Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
there were some people who said, I want these stores to be nearby. I don't want to leave. It'd be more convenient.
Were they younger people typically?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't talk to anybody who was over 40, I don't think.
That's what I'm saying. Today, the younger people, they'll trade the
Right.
serenity for the big box
So that,
amenity.
and then we got a lot of recommended improvements to the park where we were at as well. And we had a lot of people, I would say probably about a quarter to a third, who were people who didn't live in Independence, but were coming to Independence Township twice a week, if not 4 times a week, to bring their children to soccer practice. And so they were saying that they really liked to come into Clarkston for restaurants, and that they were obviously coming here for the recreation. Some of them may have lived outside the community, but were part of the different school districts that are serviced by Clarkston, or serviced by the same school districts that are in Independence Township. So we got that perspective of people who frequently visit here as well, and what they were looking for.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted, regarding the Target comment, I made a comment earlier about more opportunity for services and shopping. I wasn't talking big box.
Okay.
I'm talking a local neighborhood,
Yeah.
appropriate scale
Yeah.
opportunity.
And this is a very small subset. I mean, we grabbed people, who were dropping their kids off and asked them their opinion, so it was more of a person in the street type of interaction. But there were some parallels also when we had a formal focus group at the senior center, and those were again about open space and preserving the community character, and that was very strong from that group. And in fact, not wanting any more development, or if there was development, to take more effort to protect natural features.
Yeah, that was, in terms of development, it was more thoughtful planning, and having a long-range vision when the township develops. And then the other big parallel was year-round activities. Pickleball, people want to see recreation facilities that they can go to in the summer and the winter. So whether that's an indoor soccer field, a tennis court that could be for pickleball, things that could host various activities.
That was a great summary, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey Brent, do you need to open up the public hearing?
As I read that, there's no public hearing, correct?
No.
Okay.
It's on there as a standing item, but there was
Oh,
no
I'm sorry,
public hearing.
okay.
All right, so that's what's been shared so far, and then back to what you shared. So 2 different people said developers, builders, lender, designers, and somebody said housing, local builders, realtors, and brokers. I might suggest that you think about, and right now in the scope of work that we have with you, we have workshops, and those were originally thought to be specific, like Dixie Highway or like Sashabaw Road. But in this community open house at the end to prioritize implementation items, but we're not wedded to these, and we can be flexible. So I have those up here as a holding place, but they're in dry erase marker, which can be erased. So one of my suggestions is with developers, builders, lenders, and housing developers is what I found is they really don't want to share a whole lot in a public meeting. But if we have 3 or 4 of them together in a focus group where they're talking together, and we have specific questions to ask them, they're a lot more amenable to talking and sharing. If you individually interview them, you get even more because they don't necessarily want to share with their competition. That might be something that, I don't know, what do you feel, those people who said that, whether you feel like you need to talk to them now to know what's going on development-wise, or whether they would be people you would take an idea to and say, we're looking at this, what do you think the market would do, or how would that affect your business?
See, the thing is that Dixie Highway has all kinds of traffic, some traffic just going through, but doesn't have any character. You know, it's just a sort of a collection of stores and restaurants or whatever. So one thing we could do there is to maybe create some character that reinforced what we want the township to be. And I don't know how we do that exactly.
He created some sort of civic identity that's synonymous throughout.
I'm sorry?
It's kind of like creating a civic identity that's synonymous throughout the township in all areas.
Like on Sashbaw, you have like the town center look, the fence with the pillars and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and you use things like the DDA would enable you to do street lights and, you know, common themes, as Ron's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can help facilitate that
Be important.
through capture of taxes.
So if we were gonna have, it sounds like we should have a workshop on Dixie Highway at least. Who would be key to invite to those, and invite to that, and who would be the key people to invite?
But we don't really want to interfere with what is being worked on for the DDA. I don't know what that would do.
Is there an established DDA? So maybe the DDA would be a.
It's
It's
been
not
dormant
collecting,
for, 15 plus years.
Oh no, I meant, is there like people on the, so,
No,
okay,
not
so
yet.
the board has to be
We have
created.
to recreate all that.
Well, I guess I was the one who wrote the sticky note that we referred to. And my thoughts were, and this could apply to Dixie or across the board, but my thoughts were more of a focused on listening to what developers had to say, and designers and brokers and people who've been involved in investment. I'm thinking of, projects that recently have been approved, like the assisted living facility by Kirko, the bar, the surgery center, the microbrewery that you worked on. I mean, we could think of a dozen awesome projects and ask, like, why did you invest here? How's it? Are you glad you invested here? What do we offer that other communities didn't? You invested here. Why? Where do you see the community going? And they've got money invested. They've got time and intellect and thought invested. And I'd like to hear the perspective of people who've been involved at the other end, because we hear a lot of when there's development applications, we hear the neighbors who don't want to change, and that's important, and we've listened to all of them. But I want to hear the other side of things, like what is it about this township that attracted you to want to invest money and design here and lend here, and those types of questions.
So I'm building in a community, and they asked us to do a focus group, and we talked about some of the things that we think would be good products there to build. And I think that was helpful to them. I hope it was. So I think those sorts of things, but it really only worked, I think to your point, how do you facilitate that? That wasn't going to happen in an open house.
Yeah.
So I think particularly you're asking those particular, developers, business owners, those sort of, I think it does work better in focus groups. I don't know if we have the time to do that and the resources, but I felt like we could convey a lot more of what we were interested in as developers for that community, and I think hopefully it was helpful to them.
Yeah, that's see, that stated that way, that's really helpful. Zoom is there.
Yeah,
That-
Zoom made it help. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. We have time and, we have time and budget, so I think that's a great idea, and we could put that into action tomorrow if you guys wanted. We just need a list of people to contact. I think we could work.
Yeah, I can tell you that when Kirko came here, before they ever got in front of the planning commission, they had a very detailed PowerPoint, not only a market study, but just what attracted them. It was almost like we're talking about, what attracted you to this community, and what is it that is driving you here? And it's the proximity to Pine Knob, it's the, a major thoroughfare right near the highway. It's obviously the senior demographic was what they were targeting most importantly, but still they identified several things in their process of why they picked here.
Demographic, just not just seniors, it could be, income level,
Yeah,
Education.
yeah, education.
and this community has this demographic style where, your parents moved here and now you're here. My parents moved here, they're now retired and gone, but I'm still here, So it's a generational thing that seems to happen in this community that I think is different than any other community. One thing I noticed too about our character in this community that I was talking to the supervisor about is, the varsity football team has a team dinner. Those restaurants donate all the food for, multiple restaurants donate food to the athletes. I mean, that's a big expense that these restaurants, but they care about our community, and I think that's a huge investment into one of the most popular things in our community, which is football.
And also to piggyback on that, I was driving somewhere Friday night with my daughter, and I'm up in the northeast corner. My kids went to Orion schools. Don't boo and hiss me, okay? But we're driving. I took a shortcut and I went by the high school. And it was Friday night just before the
Yep.
football game. I'm like, oh darn, I shouldn't have went this way because it's going to be crazy. And the amount of people tailgating.
Yep.
That speaks more than just to pride of school. That's pride of community. That's it was impressive. It looked like a college football game with all the people out there.
Yeah, you better get there and park by
Yeah.
5:15 or you're not getting a spot.
Really impressive.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Actually, that's a great idea.
That's a
Not a bad
great
idea.
idea.
Unfortunately, that last home game is Friday, so,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That is a great idea.
because you'll catch 500 cars there, easily,
Okay.
just in one parking lot.
The record was better, you could say they can do a playoff game.
Yeah, well,
You mentioned the
We'll see.
redevelopment I did on Dixie. I did, 2 buildings, and, I can talk to the owner, get his
Mhm.
input, and, it's interesting. I think he, and, Brian knows who he is. I think he wanted to invest more
you
in
do.
Independence for a long time there. Every 6 months, he's like, what about this building is for sale? What about that building? I heard it was going out of business. It's kind of died down with him lately, but there's a guy who wasn't originally from here, brought his family here and fell in love with it,
And it's a great spot. I've eaten there with my family 30 times. It's awesome.
And his son lives in the community now.
Yeah, and I know a couple of doctors that I redid their offices, and they're talking about, hey, I'm renting this one, find me another building. My lease is up in 3 years. One mentioned to me that a
Mhm.
couple months ago. So the thirst to stay here and build business here is out there. It's
And
know,
then- and
right
that-
opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, when you talk to architects, engineers, brokers, you know, what are people telling you they like about Independence Township?
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, so circling back to different ideas,
Mhm.
I think, Alyssa, are you free Friday night? Okay. I
Get
can
here
do-
by 5,
Yeah, we could get here by
5 to 7, yeah.
5 to 7? Okay, we'll talk after.
Okay.
But I think we can run the same type of exercise that we did with the soccer parents at the,
Very cool.
at the high school football game.
Do you have any, a couple of Clarkston football jerseys that could wear?
I wore a Liverpool
I do.
jersey at the soccer tournament, at
There
the
you go.
soccer practice.
I do, I have a gray one and
Hey,
a white one.
For some
or
reason,
a
if you can't
blue
make the
one.
football, even Clarkson varsity soccer, they probably get
Soccer,
close
that
to
was-
600-700 fans at their game. It's
Soccer
Wow.
last night was crowded when I
Yeah.
picked up my son. for
See, there,
football.
yeah,
Wow.
I think we may be onto something here.
Okay, so we'll talk and we'll do
Yeah.
at least one sporting event.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause soccer was pretty good
That's
crowd
awesome.
last night and it was miserable weather, so.
Yeah, I was surprised. I went to my first varsity soccer game this year. So our exchange student is a soccer kid, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of people here.
are the,
Yeah.
are the high school, is the school district boundaries relatively close?
Yeah, they are. They extend into Springfield
Mhm.
a little bit. They extend into White Lake, but otherwise, yeah, they're pretty much.
For the most
and then
part.
your quadrant,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
funky up
is
there.
Orion,
Yeah,
but there's a little bit of Waterford down Sashabaw at the very end.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, it's relatively.
okay,
But, you know, where Brian and I live, we live in Springfield, but we're Clarkston. I mean,
Mhm.
we consider ourselves Clarkston
Yep.
residents. It's Clarkston mailing, so.
yep, same here.
Okay. Did somebody put sports leagues?
Oh, that was me.
That
Just
was
from
you?
that.
Yeah, from our focus group. So does that capture, we go to tailgate?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What age kids were they, roughly?
We had, I think there were U8s, U10s, and U12s.
Okay, So-
younger.
so younger than the high school crowd.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So it seemed you had two groups of stakeholders, Dixie property owners, business owners on Dixie, and then Judy's list of people to talk to in Dixie Highway. So it seems like there should be a workshop on
Yes.
Dixie Highway,
Yes.
and then town center, Sashabaw and property owners, local medical practice owners and medical professionals. Would we say all those can group together and would be around Sashabaw Town Center area?
Mm-hmm.
And what I think, just reminded me, another comment that was made about the town center that I thought was really interesting is people said that when, I think the initial design is, it was meant to be walkable, and they said, but it's not, and it's somewhere that you go and park, and then, so you park at the restaurant you're gonna eat at, and then you drive to wherever you're gonna go. And so they said they'd like to see that to be more walk, or even safer, you know, wider sidewalks, things like that. So I think that would be something interesting to talk about too, the town center.
But based on how you were talking about it, these could be, you could have them at the same time and then have them switch, or you could have different nights or different days for them. What seems to work, and I think they did this in Troy, is to have, to maybe open it up with some sort of panel of people talking about these areas to begin with. So maybe somebody from the township or somebody from the township, whether it's staff, planning commissioners, former township board members, talk about how it was originally developed. And then to have a property owner or a developer also sit on that panel, and what they do is they kind of give some context and history of the area, and how it developed and what's going on and what could be, just from their perspective, and then have people go and do activities asking the questions of what you're willing, and those questions need to be geared towards what you're willing to change in your plan. So if you're not willing to change some things in the plan, you need to tell people this is off the table, like this is the baseline that we're operating from. Because if you just give people a clear slate, a lot of times they may ask for things that you can't deliver on. So, and any thoughts on that, on those ideas, whether to have workshops on those two areas, and then what structure they could be in?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the town center itself, it was developed as a PUD, and most of it at least, or a lot of it at least, and for the most part, it's close to build-out.
Well, the town center concept, you have to have a PUD or a special land use. So that's right out of the gate, no matter
Mhm.
what. But the town center concept really started, I don't know that it's necessarily close to build out, cause I think we have tons of property over, 500
Okay.
acres or something over here that McLaren's sitting on.
Okay,
But, still, the concept really kicked into overdrive when we widened the road in 2003.
I just want to make sure that when we talk about town center, we're not talking about Sashabaw. We're actually talking about town center.
Well, the original focus of what was town center was at Bow Point and
Mm-hmm.
Walden Center Drive. So,
And
But
you
it's
envision, it
That
was
was
envisioned
part-
that there would be a downtown, that'd be like the downtown area.
like a town square and things like that.
So when we talk about town center, I think, my mind is basically Sashabaw, both sides for, I don't know, around 500-600 feet, maybe plus or minus deep, both sides from maybe the Clarkston, basically. That's town center, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're all talking the same
I
language.
mean, yeah, I would go really Walden to maybe.
I said Clarkston, excuse me, I
Yeah.
meant Walden.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Walden,
I
maybe.
apologize, Walden.
Yeah.
Walden maybe.
Because this road here, Walden Center, was all
Yeah.
part of that vision.
I was
from-
thinking Walden, but I said Clarkston.
And that was from the mid-90s and early 90s when they did the Vision 2020 plan, and the late 90s. This was all envisioned. What we're
Mhm.
seeing across the street, what we're seeing here, and down, things have come to fruition that were in the Vision 2020 plan, and we're now 2022. So, that's what I think we're seeing, it's a real hard pill for some of the people to swallow that have lived here a long time, because they don't understand that history of the planning in this township,
Mm-hmm.
so.
That's what we said. Yeah.
It is, it's a big dichotomy that we're dealing with.
So from the standpoint of providing a history and maybe bringing some people in who's got institutional knowledge, maybe investors, developers, et cetera, given the fact that there's still a racetrack left with undeveloped property, I think that's a good idea, and I think I cut you off there, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say that we named it, or somebody named it Town Center, but if you ask anyone, there is not a town center. And what's being worked on, outside of this building, and the, denser population and the new area that's going up, that might, because we always wanna be walkable, but these places are, there's no reason to walk, really. They're all quite a distance apart. So you might as well drive and park in their parking lot.
I think
That's
in
what
in
everyone
the center,
does.
you go between maybe and Walden, in the center is where all the vacant land is, and McLaren owns all that, so they're, and the people that McLaren, the parts that McLaren doesn't own, those people are waiting for McLaren to do something,
Yeah,
cause they don't wanna do something that can't take advantage of whatever goes there and everything, so.
Mhm.
They wanna synergize with whatever the growth is, so I think of the center part being bare like that, or open, there's no reason from, if you walk at one end, you got a half a mile to go before you get to the next building then, so.
So
yeah,
it's-
and I hope that what's going on across the street, in conjunction with us designing more of an open gathering space outside town hall, that will be a nice bracket to maybe being a focal point of the township.
A, from the group, should you have a workshop on this area that's being described? Sashabaw from Walden to maybe, Is this something that you want to discuss and potentially change in the master plan with the community? You know,
I'm
I'm
a
seeing no.
I'm a no.
You're a no? Okay.
Well, the challenge is the hospital, and
Say you'd almost have to have a McLaren representative, because
It's
really, if you're
basically-
gonna put something that's non-McLaren there, like, amphitheater, or, you know, something that, like a gathering point, that would be, you know, at the focal point of the middle of that thing, it's gonna have to be something that McLaren's in favor of, because they're gonna have to give up the property to do that, so.
Or is McLaren one of the conversations you have with the focus groups,
absolutely.
as a stakeholder?
Yeah, 'cause supervisor and I have had conversation, you know, a sit-down meeting to get an idea of what their plans are. And they have plans for that area, but they not moving they don't move like, you know, they don't submit something tomorrow after we meet with them. I mean, it's a long
Well,
process.
it really has to synergize with what their big plan is, and their big plan is they want a hospital.
Correct.
So-
Exactly.
And so they don't wanna start investing in it, because everybody goes, well, you know, they'll
Yeah.
put the hospital in whenever we okay it, and so it won't matter, but they want that green lighted so they can
That's
start
why it's
investing in the
way
other
more.
stuff too.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
they're
'cause there's
really stuck,
Right.
you know.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of other buildings and facilities they wanna build over there. That's in their head, but you're right. Till we have a hospital, green light, which who knows when, then they'll pull the trigger and you'll see the whole thing get developed probably. But
You go around, McLaren has built buildings and, you know, opened other types of businesses all around, you know, southeast Michigan, even mid-Michigan. You know, they're all over the place building things. Grand Blank's got 2 or 3 facilities now, and there's different things. There's no one hospital, but.
Yeah, but you'd have to go, to the legislature.
Right, I mean, the way it's
and-
set up right
and
now. but-
discuss it.
So the conversation in town center would be very hospital-centric. That's gonna
McLaren-
drive,
Yeah,
that's good.
McLaren.
Well, that's because they're holding all the land, or
Yeah.
a lot of the property right now, so.
And that's a given.
yeah, so,
And so that's one of the givens that you start the conversation from.
mhm.
But I mean, if we could come up with an idea and synergize with them, they said, okay, hey, we'll be willing to participate in this entity, that whatever we say that we want there, to make it a focal point or whatever. I mean, that's what we gotta come up with. What is it that we want? Maybe like in the center of the whole thing, to make it be the downtown strip right there.
I can't see it,
No,
not there.
but I'm just saying, you gotta have an idea first before you can get Claren to buy into it, because they're not looking to spend the money, but I mean, if it's something that would make their whole long-range plan be better, then maybe they'd participate.
Plus you need someone to run it if you're gonna have some sort of a central place.
Put a walking bridge over the road.
That was actually,
That was one of the things we talked about.
that
Or
was in
or
the
put a
last
tunnel
master
underneath,
plan.
just have a way
There's a
to
graphic
get
of
from
it.
one side to the other.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that it's worthwhile to sit down with Ms. McLaren as part of the planning process, see what their plans are. But it might be premature to change what's in the master plan right now for this area unless they're willing to say, unless they have a clear idea of what they're gonna do in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, I think it has to be something that synergizes with their long-range plan, so,
Okay.
you know, something that they could envision being part of, so.
So maybe,
Um,
this maybe isn't a big public thing.
It's probably more of a focus group with, with them as the main stakeholder, and then you've got other property owners on the west side, right?
Well, they own a lot of the property on the west
Do
side
they?
too, yeah.
Yeah,
That's the whole problem.
So.
Or they have
that's what I
options,
thought, yeah.
you know, first
McLaren
options on it, so,
and-
yeah.
Property owners.
Well, Ron's right, until they know what they can get in the future.
Like I say,
There's no
but they're
rush.
not out there thinking about development, they're just holding their cards right now. But I mean, if we could come up, you know, if we had some other people, hey, let's do this, and, you know, and it's something that struck their chord, I don't think they're totally shut down against anything. They don't wanna put a bunch of investment in,
Mhm.
you know, unless, you
Yeah,
know,
of course.
they kinda look like, hey, we're withholding this carrot until we get what we want, and then we'll
Right.
open up and spend our money, so.
Well,
Cause they're
it's like-
spending money, you know, they have money to spend, they're doing it in other places. But they were
Yeah.
kinda like, we're not doing anything here until we get what we want, so.
Yeah, I mean, like MSU was a unique scenario, the credit union, that was one that they were willing
Yeah,
to part with.
they own the proper, they own what, Uncle Peter's,
Yep, they own that.
pasties,
Hmm.
you know, they own,
No.
MSU bought that property. And then they did a land swap with McLaren
Oh.
to move down to that corner.
Hmm.
MSU Credit Union down there, so.
There's a lot of land
They're,
there.
McLaren's willing to change and do some stuff, so they got some other property that thought could be prime property, cause was more across from the hospital and stuff, so. So they're willing to do things, it's just, yeah, I don't think they're sitting back going, what can we build over here?
So it sounds like maybe it's more of a stakeholder focus group type
Yeah,
scale.
McLaren and property owners,
Yeah.
focus group, the question is, with the assumption that McLaren's looking for it to be a hospital in the long run, what happens in the meanwhile, and where's the synergy, and how do we create a place?
Like I say, if you could come up with a public meeting place or some, you know, something that's like at that intersection that enhances, you know, say McLaren could sponsor it or, you know, have their name on it or whatever, and it enhances what they're gonna do on the other side of the road and everything, so.
Yeah.
But we gotta come up with what that vision is and that, you know, what are they willing to, what kind of activity or thing, you know, would make them wanna invest in that, so.
Yeah, and I think if you got that group of people in a room who was able to have a conversation, and we had one of our designers there, then they could take that conversation and make some sort of visualization, and then you loop it back to that group to make sure that it was right, bring it back to the planning commission, staff, township board, and then that could be incorporated as part of the plan. So, Sashabud Town Center, we've solved that, what we're gonna discuss and who we're gonna discuss it with. Next challenge is Dixie Highway. So, let's start with the where. When I say Dixie Highway, and we're gonna have a community discussion, and I think both Alyssa and I can testify, a lot of people wanna talk about Dixie Highway.
Yes.
So, what geographic area are we talking about?
I see Waterford Roads, north to Deerfield.
Mhm.
I think it's,
The what?
I think it's split between the north section, which I guess north of White Lake, maybe, and then south of White
Definitely
Lake.
north of White Lake, it's pretty much
It's just so
still
different,
undeveloped,
right? I mean,
There's
it-
a few spotty things.
But-
South of White Lake, all the way down, is the rest of it's just old buildings and
Right.
stuff.
so
but I
it's
mean,
just
that's-
different, it's just a different flavor as you cross White
Well, I
Lake
think
Road.
by having investors or developers to come there, like, what can you do? So we talked before, in like 2008, if you could get some of these people to like, cause there's like, you know, different little plots of buildings or whatever, if you get somebody to buy,
Mhm.
you know, 6 or 8 of those, and now you could change it and make one bigger
Mhm.
development instead of having 6 little ones or whatever. If, you know, not saying that's the
Target,
right
there's
thing
your
to
target.
do.
Nice.
A target. No, I'm just saying, say like Hilltop, they, you know, when we were developing that, I know you guys were on the board, well, Judy might have been, or you might have come to it, Judy, but he argued with us, like, I don't need all this parking, you know, and all, it's like, you know, he had all his ideas, when, now he's in there, it's like, shit, I need way more parking.
Yes, they do.
So,
I can attest to that.
but I'm just saying, he used to,
Well,
there
he
used to be
bought,
a
he
little
bought
medical
land
house.
around them,
That's
so
a-
he could have more
that's-
parking.
That's a
Yeah, well, he
dining
bought-
decision.
He bought the place to the north there, just so he could have a place for his employees to park, and
Yeah.
more room for his patrons and stuff.
But I was just gonna say, what I'd like to
That's
see
White Lake Road.
It's White Lake Road.
is that we
Biggest
concentrate
CVS
on a
that
section
makes it.
and try and give it some
White Lake.
character. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Instead of just bunches of,
Well, that's what I say, I think if you can come up with some amenities, even if it's the same thing we're doing on Sashball, where you put in, you know, like the fence and column, or, you know, like I said, so change the street lights, like right now, they're just, you know, normal street lights, you can make it be more like, what do they call it,
Acorns.
what do they call when the cities do that,
It's a
Cobra?
streetscape.
streetscaping.
Streetscape, so you
Yeah.
have consistent landscaping, consistent
Right.
lighting.
Yeah, there's no
consistent-
landscaping.
The
Mhm.
lighting
Zero.
was actually put in by the DDA.
As in the
township.
mid-late eighties, right?
Yeah,
It's when they, basically Dixie Highway used to have intermittent center turn lane, and in the mid to late eighties, they went through and put a center turn lane through the whole, all the way up and down Dixie Highway.
No, it's the Indianapolis 500.
So, but Clarkston has character. Clarkston's downtown has character.
But that's, in a way, that's because, you know, it does narrow down, even though there's parking on the street, you know, there's, they've got the buildings are closer to the street. I guess that's what I don't like about, you know, we tried to do that on Sashball, where we keep the buildings closer, but everybody keeps backing them up so we can have parking in the front.
Mhm.
And, so, I mean, like Leo's, you know, just flames me every time I go in there, because the parking on both sides, when you pull in there, there's no, you know, you can
It's
barely
so
back
tight.
in and out of there, because it's like, it's too close together. So it's like we didn't allow enough, you know, room in there.
It's pretty tight.
So to Judy's point, the effort should be more focused on all of the length of Dixie Highway. So I think I heard, and I tend to agree, from White Lake north, it's
It's different.
you hit White Lake, you're starting to push down on the accelerator and get ready to get on 75 or whatever.
But I'm just saying, I think we come up with a look or a
Mhm.
feel of what we're doing.
Oh, no, I think
carry
it should
that
be
on.
consistent
As
throughout. I'm
people
just,
Yeah, for
know
sure.
that,
For
you
sure.
should recognize, to your point, it's different.
It's
when you-
different. Not better or worse, it's different.
But, you know, some type of streetscaping or, you know, some kind of look that we come with. And that part of that character could be the
I agree.
landscaping, because, you know, Dixie,
Definitely.
we've talked about this before, there's, you know, the Taco
Sure.
Bell guy
Sure.
irritated me, he had these nice trees there, well, he cut them down because it was blocking the view of his building, so it's like, I'm cutting down so people can see my business. You know, but so he put in a couple bushes and that's it.
It's really all the way from I-75. We're talking the entire length of Dixie Highway that's in the township.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we'd wanna be working on that, though. We'd wanna work on a section of it.
How many miles is that, Dixie and Township?
It's only,
3?
3 to
Probably
4.
three.
4, yeah.
Yeah, maybe 4.
Like I say, the lower, say 2 miles is, you know, from M15 to the south. Or even, yeah, M15 south, if you get north of M15, it's,
Those are the challenging
residential.
lots. I mean, they're narrow, they're not very deep, it's kind of hodgepodgey, you know, in terms of lot sizes, so that's the real challenging points.
So,
A lot of-
yeah.
a lot of the buildings, like on Dixie between, like I say M15 south, some of them were just houses that they turned into office buildings or whatever, so I mean, or just kind of modified houses.
So reminding everyone that a master plan is a land use policy document, so it's not gonna be a detailed streetscape plan, it's gonna be a
No.
policy document of
Mhm.
how do we move forward.
So,
What
and
could
it
lead
could
to
also end up being something like a bubble map, where
Right.
this has a different character here. This is, you know, this is the type of designs that you're looking to have here. When you get here, that you have large plans, you already have a suburban landscape, so do you keep that, or do you look to infill that in the front? Got lots of examples of where that's been done in other communities that we've worked in. It's a substantial change to your zoning, but you need to set that up in your master plan. And then as you go further south of there, if you're using houses, if houses are being used, as offices or different land uses, those can actually stay. It's just a traditional zoning ordinance it's just not a good tool. It's kind of a blunt force tool. So if you use a form-based code where you have a house building type, then you can let that house stay and have an appropriate yard for a house. But that yard's gonna be different than if it's a single-use, one-story building, or if it is, a two-story building, or if it's an apartment building or townhouses. They require different yards because they interact with the street differently. And when the street gets narrower and wider, also how you interact with the street as a pedestrian and as a motorist changes. And so those are all things you could take into account as you look at that.
Recognizing that it's a 5-lane road
Mm-hmm.
that the township doesn't control,
The township
Yep.
doesn't control.
and the speeds, and we've all driven it, I've driven 60 miles an hour with traffic, you know, with the flow of traffic, you know,
Speed limit on Sashball is higher than it is on Dixie.
yeah, but,
Mhm.
you know, so
So,
there's challenges.
It doesn't have the curb cuts. I mean, that's another thing on Dixie.
Yeah, there's a lot
Oh,
of
it's-
curb cuts,
It's
especially
dangerous.
around M15 and maybe.
Keep in mind too, we have an overlay district on Dixie, and how many buildings or how many developments have we approved under the overlay district? Really just the Crispelli's building? Where we're flexible on setbacks and things like that. I mean, the Pool Mart, I think, was the only other site that we actually approved here, and I think that was just, he met all the setbacks, there was really nothing to his. But if you think about it, does the overlay, and this is more, gets more towards later on in this, in the master plan discussion about implementation, does that ordinance need to be looked at and something new, like, or something to capture more of a development flavor, like a form-based zoning code? I mean, I don't know, it's something like that, but it just, you'd think that more people would take advantage of the overlay district because it allows flexibility. Nobody has.
I think though, this is really, so you have this big plaza with Pet Supplies Plus, there's the Wendy's and all of that, and then everything until Williams is all pretty commercial. And so all those buildings are built out, and
And it's
I
all in
think-
Waterford, yeah.
Yeah, then you get to Waterford, so I think a lot of people, when it comes to smaller businesses, they look at that as, well, I'd rather take an existing building and move into that than build a new one that then would fit into the form-based
Mhm.
code. So, but I think it's a good idea for even just a long range, to say, you know, in 20 years, we'd like to see maybe some more businesses that are in that.
Or even if there's other things other than zoning, so programs where you can help people who are reinvesting in those existing buildings.
Yeah, because we've tried commercial rehabilitation districts, we've tried, nobody's really taken advantage of any of that.
You could, even incentives, like, so, you know, saying, if you put in a expand the pedestrian area, you can have a bigger sign, or, I think kind of speaking to, because Dixie is such a busy road that I think people would really want to say, they would want bigger signs.
And you have interested public, so my recommendation to you is that you're gonna have to have something about Dixie Highway where you involve the public. And so, what does that look like? What I'm hearing from you is there needs to be some sort of education piece to help with the context of that. But then also, then what are we asking? People are gonna have a vision or an opinion, so what are we looking to hear or have come out of that? Something that is like a bubble map that goes through there, asking people about different characters and what they wanna see there. Also, I don't know what you've done previously in previous plans, cause I know you've revisited this area several times.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what policies have we come up with. Were they successful? My guess is they weren't. Why weren't they successful? And ultimately, what do people want Dixie Highway to be? Because I don't know what planning efforts were made along Dixie, specifically to Dixie Highway.
You know,
The
over
last
the
thing we did, I
years,
think, was the late 2000s, like 2008 during the Depression. That's when we tried to get people to improve their storefronts and stuff.
yeah, the
We got-
rehab districts were put in that.
Mhm.
I mean, if you look from M15 south, essentially you have 5 fast food restaurants that aren't gonna change. You have 3 or 4 banks that are never gonna go away. You have a couple of small businesses that have been there 40 years where are they gonna go away or just keep running their operations? So it's,
But
I don't know, it's a challenging
there's
spot.
opportunities because the bowling alley's for sale,
Yeah,
for Mint, but there's also, you know, the Big Boy site, Curtis
KSI,
Kitchen site.
yeah.
So there's opportunities there, and we've had a lot of interest in those properties, but nobody's pulled the trigger.
I think the dollar people who own them are
Yeah,
Waiting for the big
in the
ones.
sky.
yeah,
We,
yeah, they are.
what if we did something in another community that you all know what I'm talking about, where, we had an industrial district, we had a lot of vacant buildings, and we opened up the zoning ordinance and basically said any use that's permitted in the city except single-family homes can go here. And if it's industrially zoned and surrounded by industrial zoning, it's administrative site plan review. No plan, you don't have to mess with us, planning commission. It's administrative. What if we incentivize it that way? Time. Time's valuable. And we created for Dixie Highway, here's a range of uses, it's wide open, it's expanded, here's what you can do. And as long as you do this, and this could be a certain percentage of landscaping, or reducing your signage, or increasing your signage, or whatever, you tick some boxes, it's administrative review. The predictability is there because you don't have to go in front of the planning commission. That's an incentive. Doesn't cost us a penny.
And it doesn't cost them anything.
Doesn't cost them anything. In fact, time is money.
As a developer, I love it.
Someone mentioned the bowling alley is vacant.
Oh,
Well,
it's
what
for
can
sale.
what can you offer me?
But there has to be mar-
Administrative site plan review, that's what I can offer you.
Yeah, it's for sale.
Yeah.
So, what are we asking the public?
I guess, what do they want? What do they want it to be?
So what's your vision?
What's your vision? Yeah, I
And you
mean,
can incentivize the vision, but there has to be a market there too, and
yeah.
Obviously, there's not.
So-
obviously there's not. That's the issue.
Okay, so what if we did something where, public comes in and before also maybe publish a white paper which says, these are the policies that we've done on Dixie Highway, and, also maybe have a graphic that's opportunities and constraints. So that the bowling alley being up for sale is an opportunity. The fact that it's a
Mhm.
5-lane highway that's owned by somebody else and controlled by somebody else, that's a constraint. Then have presentation, and then just to get everybody on the same page, and then have people work in small groups about what their vision is for the corridor, using those opportunities and constraints. Whoever was the facilitator would have to make sure that they kept those in mind as they were talking about it, shared it, come back. And then you as planning commission look to see, you probably would look to see what the collective vision was, and then see if that's something you could incentivize in one of the ways that we talked about. And then you would bring that back, maybe in a community open house later.
What if we had it on a Tuesday night at a restaurant on Dixie Highway, or in another space that we can get a couple pizzas and some pop, and we walked some of Dixie Highway?
I think that would be great. I think also there was the idea that you can't walk all of Dixie Highway.
Not all of it, no, to get a flavor of, it's one thing to sit in this room and talk about Dixie that's
Mhm.
way over there,
Yeah.
versus we're on Dixie, there's the cars and there's the old buildings, and here we are.
I think that's a great idea, and Brent, from your experience with working with Troy on game.
Hmm. She's got a good outdoor voice too.
Yeah.
Well, she can shout out the cars.
And then, I think the other thing, and, actually Brian and Dick had brought this up, is that another thing that you can do is that the township has access to a drone.
I use mine, so.
And then to do a drone video over the corridor, so people can see it from above, and that's another thing to share when you're talking about it. Cause it's a totally different thing to walk it and then to feel it, and then you actually get a lot of information as to why it's not walkable, and really feel some of the constraints. But then also to see the totality of the, corridor. I think we're not gonna get a wide swath of the general public to walk all 3 miles.
No, I'm talking about a couple hundred yards
Okay.
total.
What does the group feel about Brent's idea?
I
I'd
do
do
it
it.
soon. It's gonna be cold.
Okay,
Oh yeah, I forgot, it's October almost. But I mean, something that,
Get the Sprinter van, Parks and Rec has, whatever. Have
Just
little
a-
smart bus and
The
drive
ITV
around.
bus.
can we get some space that, some space like this that, we can meet in for a couple hours, enough parking that people can show up, park, and then, it doesn't have to be, it can be a couple hours long, but I think the people who are gonna be most interested in Dixie Highway are probably people that live nearby. I probably live furthest of anyone in the township from Dixie Highway, but I still have an interest in it because it's an important corridor for this township.
I take it every day.
okay. Who would we invite to that? And how would we invite them? small from Dixie Highway, nearby residents, and the business owners and property owners. So those would be people, how best to reach them, just by letter, email, flyers?
Probably flyers. Put in their mailbox or something.
Is there a Dixie Corridor business group that's active?
No.
Alright, so property owners, we need to figure out a way.
There's not a Chamber of Commerce or something for,
There is, yeah, I mean, we have a Chamber of Commerce, but,
Just pull it up on GIS, draw a rectangle around the area.
well, yeah, I mean,
pull
I
all the
can
Property owners.
I can grab addresses for everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's easy, but,
Stuffing all those letters. That's
Hilltop
hard.
to the South and
yeah, I mean, I can
Millsville
get all
to
the
the north.
addresses and names
Pick
of
a couple
people,
more.
but it's,
people in between.
Well,
It's
we're not gonna
expensive.
get everybody to show up. If that's
No.
gonna be a block, then we might as well, like, this is like your wedding. You know, my San Diego relatives are not coming.
offer, coffee and donuts and
Food,
it's not your typical dinner, your typical meeting, it's on-site.
okay. Do you feel like you have some interested public in this, if it's just put on the website and put out to,
I think we'd have to put something in the Clarkston News.
okay,
I think a lot of people read that. I do.
Everybody gets it
It's
now.
free
Yeah,
now.
it's
yeah.
free and
Now it's free every week, isn't it? With the
Mhm.
new
Mhm.
So
publisher?
far.
I used to pay and get one paper, now I get two for some reason, every week.
And
I'd
it's
say
free.
8 out of 10 weeks, I get 2 papers every week. It's like, I only need one. Why do you keep giving me 2?
They did that for people who paid, I would get 2.
Maybe that's why, because I paid too, so.
and then also,
What you need?
on these stakeholders
doesn't
that
make
people
sense.
had talked about, we've got large subdivision association presidents, HOAs, recreation, medical, transportation, senior center, assisted living facilities.
Well, I wrote one of those, the large, so at least since I've been here, we've approved a lot of subs. And there's some pretty big subdivision developments that have association presidents.
Mhm.
I mean, it seems like they could capture what everybody in their subdivision complains about. And, we could pick their brains, hey, what did we do right when we approved your sub? What did we do wrong? I mean, I think we have a good group here. We've been together about 10 years. If, let's say we get 15 of those people here, if 10 of them say we did this wrong, hey, I wanna listen to them. Maybe in the next one, we take a look at that, That's kinda was my idea with that.
So that's more of a focus group.
Yeah.
they also potentially have databases with lots of email addresses to get the word out.
Yeah.
Well, the township used to
HOAs.
keep a list of the association officers. Do you still do that?
It's not up to date.
Not up to date.
No,
Is there
I frequently talk to HOAs, it's almost every day. So especially the bigger ones, I know right off the top of my head who to contact, but I think you're right, Brian, this is coming to head with Eagle Ridge, you guys saw
Yeah.
that,
Mm.
So, yeah, I think there's some things we can look at going forward. That's really the only conventional, site condo we've approved that's not geared towards seniors, it seems like. Ardmore would be the other one,
Okay,
but,
so we.
I mean, we could get a half dozen HOA presidents here and you could get pretty far with them. I mean, when Supervisor Kittle was here, he and I would split up these talks and, we'd go to their annual meeting and, but it was more of a spiel about, what's going on in the township, things like that. It wasn't to hear their heartburn, their pain.
Yeah.
Because we tried specifically to avoid that.
Yeah, and this isn't to hear their heartburn either.
No,
This is land use policy we're
it
talking.
is, yeah.
Okay.
But
So
we
let's-
used to talk about land use policy in the township. So, at these meetings,
Yeah.
so,
Well, my point is, we need to be explicit. You're coming here to talk about A, B, and C, not D, E, and F.
yeah.
Not your pothole.
Not the,
Not the
not
pothole.
the trash not being picked up
Yeah.
or something like that,
So this is just like the HOA presidents,
or board.
the board.
Yeah, any board member.
So I'm just saying, if we're talking about everybody in these HOAs, we're excluding the people that are not in an HOA.
Yeah.
So if it's a focus group just on board members, I can see value in that.
Well, yeah, because like you said, they've got they're connected to a lot of people in the large development, so
Yeah,
they're touching a lot of bases.
yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of the issues are, that the HOAs aren't well managed. I mean, that's, which isn't our issue. but I'm just
Yeah,
saying
and I
that-
guess my view of it was more of a look into our job from an outside set of eyes. We approved your subdivision, you've lived there now, it's been complete for 4 or 5 years. What would you do differently? You know, I don't know.
What
If
do you
we-
like, what would you change, what would you?
If we're planning, you know, if we're creating a vision to plan future development, you know, I just thought it might be look good at the job we've done.
You can pick some, I mean, you got was it North Point and Malden there? So,
Oh, Northridge,
Northridge?
yeah.
Am I?
And Northridge, you got Ardmore, you got.
And maybe even some
Mike
older
Meister.
ones too, that, you know, you could throw Oakers in
Yeah.
there. We didn't necessarily do that as a group, but we know a lot of people who live in there, you know. You were around, I think, maybe.
Well, the point as a focus group is you're trying to cherry pick, and that seems like a good starting point. Is and maybe not just the new ones, but a sample, both not only in terms of when they were approved, but geographically where they're located, as an idea.
I mean, even my parents, they live in Deer Lake Farms. It's one of the oldest subdivisions around. There's been developments we've approved next to them. Hey, how did that really affect you? Does the traffic come through there, you know?
Alright,
Up the Deer Hill Peeling.
Yeah.
we'll add that to the list. And then, recreation, medical, transportation, senior center, assisted living facilities, that was the stakeholder. I feel like in our senior citizens focus group, we reached a lot of these, we reached some of these people and these issues were talked about, the need for transportation, and also, in improvements to the senior center, and a lot of that was full-time recreation, the power of pickleball. And then there's also, and also talking about assisted living facilities, and one of the things that someone said, but it seemed like most of the people in the room agreed with, was that it's difficult for someone who's looking for assisted living facilities or senior living facilities to suss out the differences between all the ones that are available and who has room and who doesn't and things like that.
Somebody mentioned like a liaison would be helpful for them, just to be able to go to and ask them questions and they can point them in the right direction. They said that, yeah, there's a lot of options and there's a lot of programming and things like that, but how do you find what works for you?
What works for your parent?
We need a place for mom, right?
Yeah.
That's
Except we should have enough choices in our township now, then we were approved. So.
exactly. We're the senior living capital.
Well, the
Michigan.
Monarch one there in Sashabo, that's just getting ready to open, it's, you know, it's
They've
got
done
like,
really a nice job on the landscape.
it's got like, what, 4 different areas, right? I mean, you can pretty much go there as a independent
place.
senior and move to the different sections and,
That'd be great.
you know,
Yeah.
that's one of the few that has all those different levels, I think, but.
And so I feel like we've worked through all the different issues that we've talked about and that were, that you brought forward, and then the only thing that remains in terms of my list of questions is, after we do all this, we have 3/4 baked potato of a master plan update. Do you wanna have this open house where you would look at present different options and get feedback? Or would you rather, after this is done, we come back to you and you decide whether that's needed?
I like the latter. If I'm voting.
Okay. So we come back to you after we come to this and say, I think this is what.
Wait to see what we make and then, okay, this cake's not good enough, I'm not showing it to nobody.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully the cake won't be completely flat.
your souffle, be all nice and high, and then poof, drop down.
Well, so just to recap, what we would do going forward is, some sort of interaction at a high school sporting event, similar to what we did at the soccer practice. Focus group with McLaren and property owners in that area. A focus group with HOA presidents to talk about, what we've done right, what we've done wrong, what could have been improved, and the idea is when we're looking forward to new housing developments, what are the lessons learned? A community workshop on Dixie Highway, which would be held on Dixie Highway. It would have food, it would have walking, it would be fun. It would
Be in June.
be June.
Yeah.
I don't, you can do this in November. We did this in November in Troy. You just need appropriate layers and to make sure we have hot cocoa for everybody. That would have the walking tour, education, and then small group visioning. And then that would be your community engagement for that, and then we come back to you and talk about whether if there's anything else that's needed.
If I can add, that was one thing too that a lot of people that we talked with, especially the seniors, they were, as soon as the meeting was over, when's your next focus group? What can we attend next? So I think having an open house, even, if it's just at a community event and we put up a table and a booth, and I think would cover those bases so people feel like they had an opportunity. If they want to say something, they have a place to say it, and we ask them.
So we've gone, that was my understanding. Is that everybody's understanding of what
Take the QR code with you,
the QR code for,
Mr.
Survey?
Ottman's survey.
oh yeah, when we go to, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look
Pass
at
it out
you.
at the football
Look at you
game.
thinking, that's
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah. Actually, Alyssa was great at that. She could get people to do the survey. the soccer
We made-
practice.
Tell them they gotta
Like
fill
little
out the
skinny-
survey before you give them the free drink.
Yeah.
We printed off I think 50 of those little skinny flyers, cut 3 out, and we passed out almost all
Yeah.
of them.
I don't know whether you had a bump in responses based on that or not.
425 as of today, so.
So, yeah.
Nice.
Okay, anything that you feel it's not there that should be on this strategy going forward for community engagement?
I just have a random thought.
I love random thoughts.
I think
Is that
we
in
should
Independence?
turn the bowling alley property into a hockey rink. If we could get someone to do that, that came up at one of our past discussions. I think the first one we had of wanting a hockey rink. And since sports are so popular,
It'd be great.
and get
Need
well
more parking
attended.
too, so.
And I know nothing about hockey rinks, but if,
Well, we've been talking about have some kind of sports center, whether,
Yeah.
even
Indoor,
back
yeah.
on Sashball,
Yeah,
Plains.
and Dixie too.
cause you'd want it to be more than one sport, so you could have it year-round, probably.
Oh, that's what I said, you want a center where people could be indoors as well as outdoors.
Yeah.
Bounce in Heartland, so half is a hockey rink and then half is a gymnastics. And then they have stuff upstairs, you could even do something like that, like half hockey, and then have some sort of multi-purpose court on the other side.
It's just the decision is whether you would want it to be privately owned, publicly owned, or whether it's semi-public. And there's options.
You walk a fine line with a facility like that of decimating our parks and recreation.
You're like competing, you're a public entity
Well,
competing
why
against
couldn't-
I
private
mean,
entities.
the travel teams do it enough.
But what's his name? Parks and Rec.
Derek?
Derek. That was something he'd actually discussed, is that if a large sports facility did come in and it was privately owned, that would make it, so a lot of the residents that do the rec department, they don't pay as high of fees as they do with the private
Mhm.
leagues. And so that would ruin a lot of opportunity for people who couldn't afford those high fees. And so having a municipal, center was kind of his vision.
So we were talking to folks and I was just recently talking to folks in Howell because they're doing their master plan, but we're talking to their, there's the HAPRA, it's a Howell Area Parks and Recreation Authority, so it's the city and the 4 surrounding townships. And they they had found is that when they built an indoor facility, it's outside of the city, actually them being able to lease that space gave them the ability to then, that gave them some more revenue, and actually when the outlying townships developed their own public areas, for fields and whatnot, that was places where they could then go and have their programming, rather than right now it's so constrained that they have to lease it from private property owners, and so that can go off. So that, if you're really interested in that, I think you should, as part of this process, we should talk more with Parks and Rec, but really look at kind of the market around here, because I know from raising my teenage boys playing club soccer, there's a big business for these indoor spaces, and then, where they are and how they compete with each other is a whole other thing. So that would probably need some more study, but we can help with it.
But we wouldn't necessarily have to cut it out from our Parks and Recreation, but I guess the expense, we couldn't really afford the expense, right?
Oh, we'd have to buy a $2 million building,
Hockey rinks are really expensive.
Yeah.
especially hockey, yeah.
Registration in Michigan's down right now.
And that's like a high maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
With ice and stuff.
You got the chiller unit and the maintenance, the power, the electrical.
Zamboni.
Oh, yeah.
As compared to soccer.
I'm not poo-pooing it. I think it's a great idea.
Cross my random thought.
No, I think it's a great idea, and I like where you're going. I think it needs further study, just because I was talking about this with someone today, that numbers for registration in Michigan are way down.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna take this back.
There's a comment. They said, will there be an opportunity, and then it went away.
Oh, yeah, what,
I mean, I don't know what the rest of it said, is what I'm saying. Is there any other?
Yeah, I think there was gonna be a hockey arena in Clarkston about 10 different times.
yeah.
Oh,
There
yeah.
was talk of putting one in, next to Pine Knob, where that retirement facility kinda went in
Yeah.
along there.
I still think
It
Pine
says,
Knob
will there be
is
an
like,
opportunity for me to speak
you
at
know,
the end of the
50%
meeting as a
wasted
resident,
because you got all that
ambassador,
parking
Karen,
there.
Headwaters,
Yeah, they could build
Conservancy.
something
That's another
else there
focus
to-
group.
Cause
Yeah.
the park is only used, 24 times a year,
Yeah.
for the most part, and
That's
then
a
the rest of it's
big
just
focus
sitting there
group
the rest
is
of the
the
year.
wing.
Yeah,
You
you
could
could,
build another facility and use that same
you
park.
could take down some of that
So-
forest in the front and put a hockey arena there, sure.
We've got a resident who's patiently listened, and Camilo Duarte, I'm gonna give you the floor. Welcome, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Great. Thank you. I did turn off my video because it was looming a bit large behind you there earlier. I just wanted to briefly speak. I really appreciated the meeting so far, and I just wanted to chime in real quickly to piggyback on some of the comments at the beginning of the evening that talked about community character and how open space seems to loom large in a lot of residents locally. I am a local resident. I've lived here for over 10 years now, but I've also recently become an ambassador for Blue Heron Headwaters, which manages indirectly about 500 acres of green space regionally, and is also featured in the master plan as the previous name of North Oakland Headwaters Land Conservancy. A really good partner, I believe, to a lot of residents that value the green space of North Oakland Headwaters region. So I just wanted to let you know that we have actually interacted with a lot of residents recently at Art in the Village, and also at the Michigan Monarch Festival, and a few other local community events where people came up to our booth and we let them know that there is a master plan review in effect. So I wanted to make sure that some of those voices are heard, And I'm sure some of them responded directly to the survey, but we also created a collection of comments that came to the tables at these public events, and we'd be more than happy to pass them along to you as maybe that different perspective of many of the community members that would like input.
That's awesome. Were you aware that there's a community survey that's being implemented by the township, and there's a QR code document that's out there that's very shareable that you could maybe share with some of your members and do some outreach and get some responses that way to us?
Yes, of course. So actually the QR code was put right onto our table,
Awesome.
the exact same one. And so if they didn't go directly to that QR code, we also compiled it just at the booth itself. So there might be people that went there directly, and there might be people that we're going to be submitting to you that wanted us to submit their comments.
That's great.
Should we submit that to Brian or something?
Yeah, you could submit that to Brian Ottman at the township. That'd be great.
Of course.
Do you have any thoughts on the discussion as a resident, just on some non-open space comments or ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I love this town, obviously. That's our town region. That's why I'm here. That's why I was drawn to move here, and why we've stayed. It's a wonderful space. I do drive Dixie every day, but I don't want it to drown out literally the voice of other concerns that people have in the community, even though it's one of those annoying commutes that a lot of us take, that we would love to see improve and become part of our fabric a little bit more. I'd also like to make sure that our planning focuses efforts on maintaining the beautiful spots that we have. And that does include, protecting those greenways that everyone values so much that sometimes do abut against new developments, and even improvements. But sometimes there's some really good synergy where, it is nice to go down Dixie and see some green space, which then tells you, hello, you're entering Independence Township, where it isn't just overdevelopment. It is green and it is natural, which is why people move here. So having that kind of, where the waterways actually meet into Dixie, continuing those greenways so that people see there's the lake. And that allows that's only going to happen through proper planning, where we allow, native plants, green space that abuts the highways and then transfers over into the rivers and the streams, so people drive through and they also see those areas instead of just, seeing, businesses that block those views.
I think that's great feedback. I really appreciate your attendance and your comments. I think they're well stated, and I agree with you. I think our efforts need to be balanced, and we can't just focus all our efforts on Dixie, but that's one of those things Dixie's just kind of been a challenge for a long time. So if it sounds like we're focusing on it, it's because it's been a challenge for a long time. But I agree with you. Our open space is one of our greatest assets here. We want to protect what we have. I also encourage you to get your application into the Planning Commission. There is turnover here. And I think you'd be an asset if a spot opens up. Get your application in.
Thanks, Camille.
Thank you. I will log off and get off this screen immediately.
Thank you.
She's smart and one of my favorite neighbors.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That was great. I appreciate that.
We have everything we need unless you have more direction for us.
So just to add, I was kind of curious. She said she thinks that there's some issues that could be drowned out by Dixie. Is that what you were referring to, Brian, earlier at the bottom of that table? School-age children, community character, things like that. I guess what I'm saying is, if we go Friday, should we focus on these? Asking
Yeah.
about these too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And open spaces too. I think that's what she was
Oh,
pushing.
okay. I misunderstood, so thank you.
But I think that's true. I think we did spend 90% of the time talking about Dixie, and there is more that we need to talk about too, so.
Well, it wasn't because it's gonna be a, 100-page document, 95 pages dedicated to Dixie.
Sure.
It's that this has been an ongoing challenge for decades.
Well, and really, this is about community engagement, so what do you need to engage the community about? And so, if you feel like there is another workshop that would be needed just about open space, we can do that as well. I think that's one of the things that we talked about with Brian, or maybe that's a focus group of a certain 15 people. Focus group really doesn't work well when you get, it's really like 10 to 20 people. But if you feel like that's a community-wide thing where a lot of people would have opinions, then that would be a workshop.
I think the challenge with open space discussions is people perceive privately owned property that's been vacant for 100 years, that has trees on it, as open space. It's not, it's somebody else's property. We've had a few developments come in front of us like that. Well, it's short of the township buying it and making it a nature preserve, what can you do? It's somebody else's property.
Or why didn't the HOA go and buy it?
Yeah, I think, seriously, in this township, I think that a lot of people perceive
Yeah.
that property that's been there forever as, that should stay like that forever.
Natural property that
And
needs
it's
to stay
somebody owns
Trespassing
it.
on with their dog and.
Yeah, and believe me, I've seen that in a lot of, it's not unique to Independence where people feel like the open space that they've enjoyed that's privately owned, should remain that way, but they don't purchase it.
Yeah.
Or even, I know of a property, over 20 acres, when it was purchased as an investment, it was a farmer's field. But it was purchased in the 80s, taken over with invasive trees. Now there's 500 trees on the property. They're all garbage, but there's value in even poor quality trees. And now it's open space. No, it was purchased with the sole purpose, with the intent of development, and now it's here. It was never intended to be open space. So I agree with you.
So-
No, we need to be responsible
Yeah.
and have the developer preserve certain areas. of
Yes.
Well, that's what I
course.
was gonna say.
Yes,
I mean, it comes down
exactly.
to land use and not developing every square inch. I think we tried to do that with
Exactly.
Walden
Yeah.
Village. I don't know if it was the right area that was saved as open space, but I think that's kind of what I was talking about.
Yes, agreed.
Okay,
Being responsible in those situations.
all right, so you don't feel like that is something that needs its own workshop or its own focus group?
I think, Brian, I think that's what you were saying, just don't fall into the trap of, the people that want open space. It's somebody else's private property there too.
Right.
And maybe
Or the
defining
township
that.
to
Yeah,
invest
how do we,
millions of
how do we
dollars.
preserve open space that can be maintained
I thought you were done. You're not done.
No, we're not done. It's fine. Okay, open space, so focus group or workshop? Is it talking to a specific set of people, or is it talking community-wide?
What would we hope to accomplish? I mean, it's a problem that comes up with any development,
Well, open space, if we ask everyone to write down, what does open space mean to you? You're gonna get 5 different answers here, right?
Right, so what I've heard when I have been interacting in your community in these different focus groups is a real concern that the community character is changing because of development, and how can the natural features in the community be preserved to the greatest extent possible? And so, again, whether it would be a workshop or a focus group, some of it would be about the constraints of what we can do in terms of private land, and that there are some different options, but really to hear people's concerns about the open space, and then talk about options that are actually possible. So,
is that interested public that keep on having coming, and maybe it's, and I don't know, a lot of times too, might be, people representing groups who are at every meeting, whether it's, a small, that group and that's a focus group, or whether you know that this is an issue that's bubbles up and a lot of people have opinions about it, then I would say if that's a workshop. If you know that there's some stakeholders who have definite opinions about it, then, and it's less than 20 people, I'd say that should be a focus group.
I think if you open up to a workshop, you're just going to get what Brent said. It's just kind of a nebulous thing of open space. I think you want to talk to some experts like Camila, which would then be more of the focus groups. I don't know how many people there are like that though, that would, make up a focus group. But that would be my thought.
The Headwaters Land Conservancy has several people, and they are our main, type of group that manages property, in the township. They have a lot of property in our township, so, I mean, they're probably the best person to talk to.
But they're a land conservancy, so,
Of course, they're gonna wanna preserve open space.
but they control, she said 500 acres, I think
Yeah.
she said. So that's a good thing. Their goal is probably to protect what they have and buy more, is my guess. So I guess when we talk about an open space focus group, what's the focus on? Is it, like we talked about, how do we ensure that development is sensitive to open space and protects a certain amount, puts aside a certain amount, or like what do we want to, we all agree that the Conservancy is a great thing. Preserving open space is great, because they own it and it's their right, and that's great. There's value there, but what's the point? Because I think community character is important, and I hear when we have development out, it's against community character. Sometimes that simply means I don't want change. It's got nothing to do with open space. It's code for I don't want change.
Well, we have property around us that's just been sitting there, but somebody owns it. But
Mhm.
the people in our HOA, they're used to just having that, being able to
Mhm.
see it, walk around in it, whatever, and don't really understand that someone else owns it.
Could build on it at some point in time.
But when we talked, Dick and I had asked you and the supervisor about different folks to talk to, and you had come back with some groups who were representing, I think, maybe homeowners in the northern part of the township that had been concerned about open space, or am I misremembering?
Yeah, no, I mean, the people in the northern parts of the township certainly are concerned. They're the most vocal on Facebook, so, I mean, and they're the most critical of everything we do in this township. So, I mean, I don't know, some of those may not be good representatives to invite to something like this, because it's just no.
Well, I would say that it's good to have their voices invited and heard and incorporated early on, rather than, my experience has been, don't give people the opportunity to participate,
Makes it worse.
especially if they're interested, they're gonna show up. And then they show at the end, and often you have to go back with 6 months of work.
Just to jump back to the land conservancy again, like Eagle Ridge and the property to the north there, a lot of that property when that was like the PUD to build Eagle Ridge and stuff, there was I don't know how many acres, but there was a number of acres that was donated to the land conservancy to keep it like wetlands and keep that stuff that way in perpetuity.
Lots of open space was given to the ridge, which was like kind of phase one.
But it was
But
supposed to be
yeah.
a golf course, but
Yeah.
instead of letting them build where the golf course was, we told them they had to see
Yeah.
natural land, but across the street from that though too, there was a big, like swampy area that that, it wasn't us, the property owner, when, as part of the deal of letting him develop the land, he gave, a number of acres of that to the Land Conservancy, so. But that was all part of that deal that we did, so.
What if this, an open space more, has that business forum format? So, you, again, open to the public, you would have a panel of folks, somebody from the Land Conservancy, somebody from the Planning Commission, somebody from Parks and Rec, I don't know, somebody who is a private owner of open space, whether it's a golf course or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They share their opinions on open space, and then so that kind of, the idea of that panel is to lay the groundwork for what we have, what's possible, what can change, and then have those folks who were there have some way for private communication, be it a card or a survey or something where they can quickly then share their opinions in open space, and then the groups can go, and then you can at least have that input of what people are concerned about, but then they have that basis for, they have a basis when they're sharing their opinions of what's possible beforehand.
I think it's a really cool approach. It's innovative. I like that. My opinion. I think you've got different people sharing their particular expertise, and then you've got the public who can engage and participate, provide their feedback. And if their main focus is community character, then so be it. They've had a chance to participate, and they've got a voice.
I think we should have something in our, master plan book to, how we have the zoning, shows the different areas, what everything zoned is. If there's like vacant land, maybe just have a little paragraph to talk about vacant land, but just because it's vacant land doesn't mean it's not, it could just be undeveloped land, not natural reserve land or something like that.
Do you know if the state of Michigan's ever flown? I forget the name of it. They fly the township and they identify the tree canopy in the open space.
Well, I think Oakland County did that with their green infrastructure program, but that was years and years ago.
LiDAR, I think it's called.
Well, no, that's a little different. That's
Okay.
3D.
Okay.
But they did that. I don't know when the last flight for that was. Probably 2007. It was that long ago.
Okay.
It was a long time ago, and with green infrastructure.
Because when you look at those maps, it's like, holy cow.
Yeah,
It's
in other
impressive.
communities, I've done vacant transitional lands, we called it, maps, where we'd identify those larger tracts that were open, or at least undeveloped,
Mm-hmm.
and focused on some of those. So, like what a potential use could be for some of those. So you had an idea of what's the true build-out. It's almost like a build-out capacity map.
Mm-hmm.
But, so that we've done that, I've done that in other communities, in Oakland County. So it's an interesting map, because you get to see what's really out there.
Mm-hmm.
But, that maybe that's something for us to consider.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I like the open space idea because first of all, it's important, but second of all, that might be the best attended workshop, or the one that sparks the most interest, because it's tied to community character, and I like the idea of people having feeling like they had a voice in the process.
It's gonna turn into development.
It might.
I mean, I guess to your point, it is a forum to hear everybody, so.
And we've got a really good moderator from Carlisle Wortman who can help us, 2 really good moderators, so.
Yeah, I just didn't want the voices to get lost in that, but.
Yeah.
And maybe there could be some, methodology, if it's undeveloped land, you know, if there's a movement, you know, let's get a movement together to make it be open space and, you know, maintained as that for, you know, to help the character of the township, or, you know, it's important because it's in a certain area that, you know,
Mhm.
that would be more valuable for that, but like somebody owns it, so you gotta come up with a way to, you know, to purchase it and,
Has to have.
right.
That's
Yeah.
right. Put your money where your mouth is.
Well, but at least give the public an opportunity. like, hey,
Absolutely.
if you want it to stay that way, you gotta do something. You
That's
can't
right.
just- If you don't do anything, at some point in time, it's most likely.
You gotta
gonna be
buy it,
developed.
you gotta convince the person to donate it, you gotta
Whatever.
write a grant to buy it, you gotta figure something out.
But I'm just saying, that could be part of what the whole thing is. It's
Right.
like you're educating them, like, this isn't, you know, open land forever, this is just undeveloped. That guy has the opportunity to, you know, put office space or homes or whatever it might be for whatever the area is. And if you don't wanna see that, what are you gonna do to change it?
That's why I like the idea, because there's an educational component, where people like, I didn't realize it was private property, I didn't realize there's development rights at stake here.
We've actually preserved a lot of open space by not extending utilities. I mean, that's a big part of,
Yeah,
of
That's-
our,
That's huge.
our
That's
It's
huge.
almost
Utility
like our
boundary.
urban growth boundary.
Yeah.
pretty much.
but I think we need to tell that story more.
We do,
Right.
because that's the
True.
true story.
Yeah, it's not by accident that we are the way we are.
And it's stayed that way for a very, very long time.
And you and Dick touched on that in the master plan video that you did.
Yeah, the sewer and water district was only expanded for Deerwood when Deerwood was created back in the early nineteen
Yeah, it's
eighties.
force main too, right?
That's all, they have their own community system.
Oh.
So, you know, and then we just absorbed it into our system, but really has not expanded at all since then.
I'm glad we got here.
Yeah.
Every township board has maintained it.
Yeah.
Going back in time.
But that is why we're focused on these two areas, because that's really what we have to work with,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Okay.
Good.
Good meeting?
That was great. Thank you very much. You guys worked hard.
Everyone participated, that was
Yeah.
good. Anyone else have anything to say on this matter? Can we move on? Final words, we're good? Okay. Approval of minutes, there are no minutes, correct? Consultant reports, anything from, okay? Brian, anything? No? Any discussion items anyone wants to talk about? Football team won on Friday, I hear, beat Oxford, okay? Item K is adjournment, I move we adjourn at 8:32. Do I have a second?
Support.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.